Well, welcome everyone to this special bonus episode of Daily Dose of Aramaic. I'm so excited about the talk that we're about to have. Dr. Israel Drazin earned a master's degree in psychology and a master's degree in Jewish literature before he earned his PhD in Judaic studies at St. Mary's Seminary and University. He is an attorney, a rabbi, a retired U.S. Army chaplain, and a biblical scholar with a specialization in Aramaic studies. That brings us, of course, together for this interview today. Dr. Drazin has written hundreds of both popular level and academic articles, and additionally, more than 50 books, among them commentaries on biblical figures like David, as well as historical figures in Judaism, such as Maimonides and Nachmanides. Dr. Drazin, welcome to Daily Dose of Aramaic.
Thank you very much.
It's exciting. It's so exciting to be with you. So could you please share what led you to become an academic in the field of biblical studies?
I was always interested in studies. When I was a youngster in high school, for example, the average student would complete 16 credits. But when I was 16 years old and was able to drive a car, I persuaded my parents to allow me to drive the car at night. During the day, I went to school from 9 to 5:30, but at night I went to school and I studied more courses than the 16 credits that were necessary to graduate high school. So I ended, instead of 4 years of high school, I ended up with 5 years. That's the way I have always been. Even today, I'm working on 3 different things at the same time.
Wow.
It's my way of thinking.
And then specifically biblical studies, what led you to that?
What I found interesting was that I'm very much interested in literature, all kinds of literature. Of the 56 books that I've written, I've even written one about jokes and pointed out that even in jokes you could learn lessons. But I found that the biblical text, more than any other kind of literature, more than Nobel Prize winners in literature, the biblical text, if one pays close attention to what is written, has more information and causes one to think better than any other kind of literature. The pagan philosopher Aristotle said that the use of intelligence is what makes a person human. I believe that. He said that a person without intelligence is no better than a plant or an animal. The great Jewish sage Maimonides said that when the Bible says that God placed in humans the image of God, that was the intelligence. Maimonides said that which saves people is not that God interferes. Maimonides felt that what saves people is their use of intelligence. This is the greatest gift that God gave to human beings. And the more intelligent one becomes, the more he or she is able to save themselves. So I found that of all the literature, and I enjoy all kinds of literature, I even watch TV and watch mysteries and trial cases because I'm a lawyer also, psychology because I'm interested in that too. But of all the different things that I learned, and I learned a lot from all of them, I found that the Bible has more lessons in it if one pays attention to the words And rather than trying to figure out the lessons, but if you pay attention to the words, the lessons come.
Mm.
And so that's what always interested me.
Well, very good. Well, of course, our Daily Dose of Aramaic viewers are particularly interested in the Aramaic language. Could you share with us what led you to your special focus on Aramaic, specifically the Targums?
I always believe that one should pay close attention to everything that's happening in life. If you pay attention, then you are able to take advantage and improve and be all that you can be. It happened that after I got a number of my degrees, I wanted to improve my ability to read dramas that are written in Hebrew. So I went to the Bowl Hebrew University. After being there for a couple of years and had an opportunity to almost graduate, I was told that there were two possibilities. One is take two more courses, and the other is to write a paper. I decided I'll write a paper because I always wanted to move ahead as fast as possible. I wrote a paper, actually a book, on the prophet Jeremiah, because I was interested in psychology. The book was The Psychology of Jeremiah, the biblical Jeremiah. My professor didn't like it, and it was never published.
Oh,
Other books I wrote were published, of course. In fact, I have close to 11,000 book reviews that Amazon has recognized. I also have my website, booksandthoughts.com. And as you mentioned, I published 56 books. But I was interested at that time in getting a second master's degree. And when the professor turned it down, he suggested that I do a work on the Targum. He asked me if I knew Aramaic. I knew a little bit of Aramaic because I went to a Jewish school which taught Talmud, and Talmud is written in Hebrew and in Aramaic. And he said, if I take his book, he wrote a book on Targum Onkelos to Genesis, together with a fellow by the name of Bernard Grossfeld, who did research for him. And he said, if you look at it carefully, you'll be able to improve your Aramaic. I did. I studied every word, compared every word with the Hebrew and the Aramaic, and I improved my Aramaic. I got the master's degree, and afterwards I saw that I could go on to Christian University and pursue a PhD, which I did. And I decided I would take that 10 chapters that I wrote for the master's degree for the master's degree, and write the Targum for the entire book of Genesis, which I did, and then I got my PhD.
okay. Well, one of your contributions we can talk about briefly here. You have asserted that Targum Onkelos is maybe less literalistic than some have claimed. And in fact, that it dates from its composition is later than is commonly claimed. Could you share some of your research findings that led you to these conclusions?
Yes. What I did was I looked at every single word in the Bible and compared it with every single word in the Targum. Targum means translation.
Yes.
And I found that there were 10,000 differences.
Mm.
And then what I did was I compared each one of the 10,000 differences with a whole bunch of sources. For example, I found that there's a series of books called Midrashim, which are sermonic interpretations of the Bible. The earliest ones are from around the year 400.
Mm.
So what I did, I compared, whenever I saw a deviation, I took a look and see what was in the early Midrashim. There are several of them. And I found consistently, and I want to emphasize consistently, that whenever Onkelos deviated and put the literal interpretation of the Bible, of the Hebrew, to explain it to the readers, he was reflecting what was in the Midrash. From that, it occurred to me that what the Talmud said, or actually instead of the Talmud said, Talmud asked who was Targum Onkelos, and he said that he was Onkelos, who lived around the 1st century of the Common Era. I realized that the rabbis of the Talmud did not know. They said they did not know who wrote the Targum Onkelos. And they thought that it was done by Onkelos, and they thought that it was done in the 1st century. But I realized that that wasn't true, because the author of Targum Onkelos was borrowing from books that were written in the 4th century, around the 400, and so therefore was from a later date. I also soon realized that the name Onkelos and Onkelos are virtually the same. The only difference is that the name Onkelos has a nun in it, Hebrew letter nun. So I dated Targum Onkelos not to the year 100, but around the year 400. So the first thing that comparison I made was with the Midrashim, the sermonic interpretations of the Bible. Then I looked at other Targums. There are 3 types of Targums. There's Onkelos, which is designed to give you the literal interpretation of the Hebrew, and there's Pseudo-Jonathan, called Pseudo-Jonathan because originally a lot of the scholars thought that the letter Tav Yud stood for Targum Yonatan, and that it was written by Yonatan ben Uziel, which wasn't true. What it really stood for was Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. At any rate, Targum Pseudo-Jonathan is a translation which adds midrashic material to it, which is totally different than Targum Onkelos. The third type of Targum on the 5 books of Moses is Neophiti, which is named after an area, which is an in-between. Sometimes it's literal, sometimes it adds interpretations, sermonic interpretations. What I did was I compared Targum Onkelos to Targum Pseudo-Jonathan and to Neophiti, and that gave me more of an insight to what Targum Onkelos was saying. So I not only looked at the Midrashim, I also looked at the other Targums. The point that I'm making so far, and I want to emphasize, is that what I did was I looked at every single word of the 10,000 deviations. Not only did I look at the Midrashim, the sermonic books, not only did I look at the three other two Targums, but I also looked at the Septuagint. The Septuagint was the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, and it also has differences between the Hebrew and the Greek. Many scholars think that there's not one original Hebrew Bible, but there's three. There's the Hebrew Bible, there's the Septuagint, the Greek translation, and also the Samaritan. I found that when I studied the Septuagint, that the authors of the Greek translation had the same concerns as the author of Targum Onkelos. And therefore is not different. It's different in addressing the same kind of issues and coming up with concerns of around the year 200 when the Septuagint was written. Then I looked at the Samaritan Bible, which a lot of scholars think is another different kind of ancient version, different than the Hebrew. And I found that the Samaritans also made changes, but they were also, just like the Targumists of Targum Onkelos, addressed things and made changes in order to make things clear. The Samaritans addressed things to put in their own theology into the text. And this caused me to understand the Targum better. Again, I'm emphasizing that if you pay attention to the details, I give the example of the Midrash, that the other two Targums, the Septuagint and the Samaritan, but I also took a look at what ancient writers wrote about Targum Onkelos. Fortunately, I'm able to read Hebrew, so I was able to read what they wrote. And I found a remarkable thing. Every single one, without exception, including even the very famous Bible commentator Rashi, who lived from the year 1040 to 1105, who was very much interested in Midrash, sermonic interpretations, all recognize that Targum Onkelos is literal, does not include sermonic material. And Rashi did this. Even though he quoted Targum Onkelos, he only quoted Targum Onkelos to show what the literal meaning was. Therefore, I was able to understand that the first person who saw sermonic material in the Targum, Nachmanides with an N, different from Maimonides with an M. Maimonides was 1138 to 1204. Nachmanides was the first person to read Akkadic or Midrashic, but those words are synonymous, material into Targum Onkelos. In fact, I wrote a book called The Unusual Thinker, not Nachmanides, The Unusual Thinker. Now, my publisher at Geffen in Israel did not want to publish that book because I pointed out, I don't remember, I'm 88 years old now, and I wanted to point out, and I did point out, that that Nachmanides addressed Targum Onkelos, I don't remember the exact number because I'm 88, but it was about 275 times. And I point out in this book how he's mistaken in virtually every single instance, and the publisher didn't want to publish it because it would affect the book that he did publish, Onkelos on the Bible, which I did with I can't think of his name right now. Again, because I'm 88, but but finally years later he did publish it. He was afraid that people would see that I criticized one of the great sages. Nachmanides was a great sage, and but he, like me, make mistakes every once in a while. Even the great Moses, the liberator of the Israelites from Egypt, made mistakes. Even Maimonides, the greatest philosopher of Judaism, probably of the world, and not probably, certainly of the world also. So made mistakes. But we all do, and I made a mistake also by forgetting the name of my partner.
It's okay.
All of us make mistakes. But the point that I want to make is your group, which is interested in the Targum, can learn enormously from the Targum if they pay attention to every single word and make comparisons.
Well, it seems like there's a wealth of research yet to be done, and just documenting interconnections and thinking about the contribution that the Targums have made to the transmission and understanding of the Hebrew Bible through time. It's very exciting to hear about this. Well, I am so looking forward to the next question I'm going to ask you, because this is something that's quite special in that when we have folks that we invite on Daily Dose of Aramaic, we want to find out about them as people, of course, as Aramaists, but also in their involvement with other areas of life. And something that is a unique contribution you have made is in the area of military chaplaincy. So my question for you here, I'll set it up a little bit. As I mentioned when we began this interview, you had a lengthy and distinguished career as a U.S. Army chaplain. In fact, you rose to the rank of brigadier general when you served as the chief of chaplains in the Army Reserve. Your legal training proved crucial during a dramatic constitutional challenge that could easily have led to the abolishment of chaplains in the U.S. military. Instead, your legal argument turned the tables and has preserved military chaplaincy to hundreds of thousands of servicemen and women, as well as to their families, to this day. Could you maybe frame the legal issue for us? I mean, this is outside what we normally talk about, so we need kind of a survey here of what's going on. But could you frame the legal issue for us, including the arguments against and for, so you're on the for side, of government-supported religious ministry as provided by military chaplains? And of course, please feel free to share your observations and insights along the way.
Okay, I'd be happy to. When I was in the reserves, I was on active duty at the beginning of my career. I started at the age of 21 in the military, served for several years, and I started as a first lieutenant in the Army, and then I went into the reserves. When I was in the reserves, I rose in rank, ultimately becoming a colonel. And when I was a colonel, I taught in the chaplain school. By that time, the Army had paid for my 2 master's degrees, my law degree, PhD. By the way, that's one of the incentives of joining the Army. The Army pays for all the degrees, and also gave me extra money to live on. And I think I paid them back by doing what I did. While I was a colonel, I taught in the chaplain school, I was a lawyer and I taught legal matters in the chaplain school as a reservist. I made an impression there. And in 1979, two lawyers, I think they were from Harvard University, challenged the constitutionality of the military chaplaincy.
Yes.
There was a case called Katkoff, K-A-T, I think C-O-F-F. I was called to attend a meeting where the chaplains were going to be um, uh, introduced to JAG officers who would explain the issues. And the chaplaincy thought that I was smart enough to perhaps add something. The JAG officer gave a presentation, and the chaplains sat back, not understanding a word of what he said. And I raised my hand and said, perhaps I can explain the situation. And they said, okay. And I went up and I explained it. And apparently I made a very good presentation. And the Army asked that I leave my job I was working at the time for the civil service as the head of Medicare's civil litigation staff, and go back on active duty and come and work in the Pentagon, and in other words, take a leave of absence and work in the Pentagon, which is allowed under the law. I agreed to do that. What you wanted to know what the issue was? The
Sure.
pointed out that the United States Constitution states Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In regard to Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, the court at that time, and maybe still today, I don't live in the past, so I don't know, I haven't have more interest today. As you pointed out, I'm also interested in the Targum and the Bible. But,
yes.
the court at that time, and again, and probably today, said that there are three tests. If the purpose of the law is religious in nature, then it's a violation. Second, if the effect of the law or practice is religious in nature, then it's a violation. And the third is if there's excessive entanglement between church and state, it's a violation of the First Amendment. Now, any reasonable person, the lawyers pointed out, and I would have to agree with their argument, any reasonable person would say that the purpose of the chaplaincy is religious in nature. No chaplain would go home and say to mom and pop, you know, one thing I can tell you for sure, I don't teach religion. They would never, they would never say that. The second test was if the primary effect of the practice is religious in nature, it's a violation. No chaplain would say to mom and pop, the primary effect of all that I do has nothing to do with religion. They wouldn't say that. Of course they wouldn't say that. So the plaintiffs were right. And it's arguable whether there's excessive entanglement, but maybe that's also so. So they have a good argument, very good argument. How did we win the case? We won the case by pointing out that that's not all that the First Amendment says.
Mm.
Say, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, but it also goes on to say, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. I pointed out that only military chaplains, because of their training, because of their sensitivity to the needs of soldiers and airmen and Navy personnel and veterans, only military chaplains would be able to take care of their needs.
Mm.
And that was the argument that won the case. I also pointed out, to move on from that, that chaplains who talk to military personnel only about Catholicism or about Judaism or about the Protestant faith or about Buddhism, they are violating what should be done, because chaplains are not that. The understanding that a chaplain was brought to serve military people to teach Catholicism is not true. Not true.
Mhm.
I taught and introduced the new idea. Not only did I save the chaplaincy, but I taught a new concept. The concept is that a military chaplain is designed to provide for the free exercise rights of all members of the military. That does not mean that the military chaplain who is Catholic has to teach the Protestant faith or the Jewish faith or the Buddhist, but he has to make sure that that person who is not of his or her personal faith has someone to come in to take care of their needs. If a person who worships the sun comes to a chaplain and has a problem, as recently happened, it reached the Supreme Court, and needs help, the chaplain should not say, God forbid, that's idol worship. No, he should not say that. He cannot say that. If he thinks that, as most clergy would think, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, but that's not what a military chaplain is. The military chaplain is someone who's totally different. He provides for the religious rights of all people. He will find someone who is a clergyman for sun worshipers to take care of that person. I'll give you an example. When I was in the Pentagon, a fellow chaplain, I was a colonel at the time, and he was a colonel, and I used to jog every day in the Pentagon for 6 miles. I had previously jogged as much as 17 miles a day, but in the Pentagon, I did it every 6 miles every day. Usually, I like to do it by myself. He wanted to jog with me because he liked me. And one day while we were jogging, he said to me, I like you a lot, but let me tell you something. If you would want to marry my daughter, I'd kill you. That did not bother me. That did not. Depends on what you focus on. He was telling me that he likes me so much that even though he would not want that his daughter should be Jewish, he still liked me. And that's what's important. What's important is that you should get along with other people. He wanted to get along with me. I wanted to get along with him, and we did get along together. And our religious views did not interfere. He was a good Lutheran, and I'm happy for him.
Mm.
And I'm a Jew, and he's happy for me.
Mm. Well, to editorialize as the host here, it is not an exaggeration to say that your argument really carried the day. Not only that, but has preserved military chaplaincy. So it's really made an outsized impact, I think, on the experience of U.S. military service members to have access to military chaplains instead of being cut off from being able to grow in their faith due to just the demands of military life, being cut off from their churches, their synagogues, and so forth. So it's really a major, I think, turning point for the U.S. military, that it's been decided, at least to this point, that it's constitutional to have military chaplains. And of course, another editorial here is, what better person to be involved than an Aramaic scholar, right?
Well said.
Yes, yes. Well, as we conclude, could you share some encouragement to our listeners about the value of studying Aramaic, as well as any tips you may have for maintaining Aramaic knowledge after one's formal study of the language is complete?
I think the experience that I had is experiences that all people should have. That is, pay attention to details, pay attention to opportunities that arise. In regards specifically to Aramaic, I think someone who really wants to understand Aramaic in regard to the Hebrew Bible should also learn Hebrew, because the two languages, Aramaic and Hebrew, are very close. In fact, a lot of the words are the same, or very close to being the same. And what the shame is, what the problem is, that most people who are interested in the Bible, which is great, and who learn a lot from the Bible, miss so much because they don't know the Hebrew and don't know the Aramaic. The Hebrew and Aramaic have in it lessons, nuances, which the English does not capture at all. I see it every day. I'm still interested in reading the Bible, even though I've done it many times. And I see lessons in what I had read before, the 100th time that I read it. So there's so much that one can get out of it. It is said that our goal should be to improve our intelligence, as Aristotle taught, Maimonides taught, and to be all that we possibly can be. And this you could do by paying attention, learning to pay attention to details, as I did in regard to the Targum Onkelos. And by doing so, one would see the lessons, the multiple lessons in the Hebrew and in the Aramaic.
Well, very good, very good. Dr. Drazin, thank you so much for your time today. And it's been a joy for me, and I'm sure our listeners are going to have a lot to think about as a result of kind of processing what we've talked about today.
Thank you. And I have enjoyed getting to know you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll continue to get to know each other. And thanks everybody for joining us for this special episode of Daily Dose of Aramaic.